Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about perfection and why it's killing you as a leader. So without further ado, let's hop right in. Hey leaders, I'm your coach Adam. Here to have an honest talk about leadership, the obstacles you might face, and how to refine your leadership skills to help you become the leader I know you are. So let's grab a drink, sit back, relax, and have a chat. When you think of the word perfection, what do you think of? For some people, it's a relationship. For others, it's a body. Maybe it's a project. Whatever it is, perfection, although it has a definition, is unique to the individual. The thing about perfection is in the eye of the beholder. Everybody has a different definition of perfection. This is what makes it so frustrating. When you look at nature, there is no such thing as the perfect bird. There's no such thing as the perfect color, the perfect plant, the perfect organism. It doesn't exist. And yet, why are we continuously pursuing the idea of perfection? For some, they pursue perfection because it's tied to their self-worth, their ego or body image. Sometimes it's wrapped up in a coping mechanism. They got praised as a child for overachieving, and this is how they feel rewarded and loved. The reality is that perfection and people that strive for perfection suffer more stress, more anxiety, more depression, burnout than individuals that don't. There's a lot of weight on an individual's shoulders when they think about obtaining perfection. It's not uncommon for me to work with a client who is trying their hardest to obtain perfection while at the same time watching their mental health get thrown into the gutters. Chasing perfection on an individual level can cause great harm to you mentally and potentially physically. I worked with one gentleman who viewed himself as perfect. He is amazing. He is God's gift to mankind. Spoiler alert, he was a bit of a narcissist. The thing he wasn't aware of was that this belief that he was perfect meant that he had put a ceiling over top of himself. He could no longer improve because he was perfect. There's no room for him to grow because he was perfect. There was no reason to learn more because he was perfect. He had unintentionally limited himself into a nice little box. That's perfection for you. The ones that tend to rally behind perfection, the ones that tend to champion this idea of perfection, are usually the ones neck deep in the fallacy. There was one woman I remember chit-chatting with, and she was waiting for her perfect mate, her perfect lover. She had been on 300 dates within the past year and hadn't found them yet. But she was not going to compromise. It was easy to see when she chit-chatted with me her loneliness and almost desperation at the fact that she couldn't find anybody. Well, the reason why she couldn't find someone was because of this fallacy she had bought into, this perfectionist idea. She was stressed out, she was angry, she was depressed. Why? Because she hadn't found her perfect man. Being a perfectionist can be incredibly destructive for an individual, but it's even more destructive for a team. As a leader that is chasing perfection, what happens to your team is, one, it crushes their creativity. Why? because you are chasing a version of perfection that is unique to you, not the team, which means that their creative ideas are going to get crushed by you because they're not perfect in your eyes. This will naturally have the consequences of potentially having your team quiet quit. Why should they care about the direction you're going if you're just going to quash all their ideas? This has the added effect of decreasing the team's productivity. They have no room to get out there and to show their stuff, to strut their expertise, their creativity, because again, you are holding them back with your view of creativity. Your people are also not going to be able to take responsibility for their own work. As you chase perfection, what you'll notice is there's going to be a mistrust of your team. You do not believe subconsciously that they are capable of living up to your standards. So what that means is any product, any essay, any meeting has to come through you first. It means that you are the overseer of every minute detail, and you are taking responsibility for any typos, errors, or problems with the project or whatever you guys are working on. The responsibility is not on the team, it's on you. This is one of the unique contributors to your burnout. Because again, you're going to be doing everything. Why? Because you don't trust your team. This mistrust will naturally feed into a couple of different toxic leadership styles. One is going to be the hyperachiever, because you are going to be trying to achieve the perfect product, which potentially means you're going to be stressing out and working very long and tiring days to create the perfect project. And not only that, you're going to be forcing this lifestyle on your team members. They are going to become exhausted trying to achieve a standard that you set. Do not be surprised if you're a perfectionist and you have staff turnover over 80%. And as we know from our last podcast episode, that's not healthy. That's a sign you have a serious problem. It also feeds into the micromanager and the controller. Because again, you don't trust your team. You have to be hovering over their shoulders all the time, making sure that they do every little detail correct, checking in on them, making sure that they're doing their job. You can't trust them to do their job, because they're not going to do it perfectly. Because of course they can't do it perfectly, because you are setting the definition of what is and isn't perfect. Perfection burns you out as a leader. It causes anxiety, it causes stress. But it's also going to eat at your team. That anxiety, that stress, that burnout, that's all going to happen to them too, as you lord over them, making sure everything is perfect. That also being said, perfection is a tool that people use to procrastinate. I can't talk to this girl, this guy, because I'm not perfect. I can't go on stage to do the bodybuilding contest. I'm not perfect. I can't hand in this project because it's not perfect. We cannot get this toy to market because it's not perfect. Perfection is often used as a tool within organizations to procrastinate. You see this all the time. Well, Jim, I'd love to get this product out, but we still need to make a few tweaks to it. We need to make sure that the software is up to date, and we need to make sure that the firewall is good before we can get it out to market. They said after they were supposed to have gotten this product to market 3 years ago. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because as long as the product or whatever you're doing is still in development, it can never be a failure. It can always be perfect. It's kind of weird that way, perfection. As your coach, if you think that you are believing in the perfectionist fairy tale and that you need to be a perfectionist, I would encourage you to look at how this belief is holding you back and what damage is it doing to you and your team right now. From there, once we recognize that, we can start moving into a place of good enough, accepting that things don't have to be perfect, and that is okay. So how do we move from a perfectionist mindset towards a good enough mindset? The first thing to remember is that good enough does not mean bad. In a lot of people's opinions, they believe that good enough means crap. It means a half-baked project, a half-baked plan that is awful. And that is not what we are talking about. We are talking about recognizing when we have something really well constructed that is quality and accepting that it is now good enough to get out to market. This plays into a business strategy called MVP, or minimal viable product. It's the belief that by creating a project that is quality, that is good, and getting it out to market, we can then receive feedback from our customer base. And through that feedback, we can improve the product and make it better. To quote unquote, make it perfect, whatever that might be. An example of this is a video game called Apex Legends. Apex Legends is what's called a battle royale. You have 60 people and they get thrown onto one map. They fight each other until one person is left standing. When Apex Legends first launched back in 2019, it was a classic minimal viable product. It was not perfect. The game was very unbalanced. It was lacking many core features that would make it fun and make it famous to this day. And it was very rough around the edges. When it first came out, it was a quality product though. And we know this because within the first month, they had 50 million people playing it. Apex Legends would then go on to start editing their product, changing the maps, creating new updates to balance the game. They would come out with seasons which had more content that the players could dig into. They would add new little tweaks and abilities to the characters to change how the game flowed. Today, Apex Legends is a phenomenal game that is raking millions of dollars in every single year. It is a phenomenal success. But it wasn't perfect at the start, far from it. And it's not perfect now. But it's a much better game now than it was when it first came out. Understand that good enough does not mean bad. It means that we have a quality product that we can put to market. A product that we no longer have to procrastinate on and we can move forward with it. The next thing to help you on your journey is you need to learn to trust your team. You hired these individuals. You put out ads, you got applications in, you reviewed potentially hundreds of applications. You brought them in for interviews, you grilled them, Then you hired them and you trained them. This is the cream of the crop for your organization. These are the top outstanding individuals out of everyone you looked at. They are competent, they are talented, they are creative. Trust them. Trust them to screw up. Trust them to make mistakes. Help them learn when they make mistakes, how not to make them, and how to grow from them. Trust your people. When they complete a project and they send it to you, don't accept the responsibility for it. Put it back onto them. Ask them, is there anything else you would like to add to this project? How do you feel about this project? What would you like to see included, if anything at all? Give the project back to them. Stop taking it on yourself. This is how you burn out, man. Stop it. Trust your team. And in trusting your team, you will learn to be able to delegate your tasks to your team. Because again, as a perfectionist, you can't trust anybody else to do it perfectly. Only you can do it perfectly, which means that everything's coming to you. But as we accept this idea that things don't have to be perfect, they can be good enough, we can give it back to our team. We can say, hey, I would like you to do this instead of me. And then we can trust them to do their job, and we can accept that they're not going to do a perfect job to our standards, and that's okay. Because again, this is the cream of the crop, and our people need to learn to fail, and it's okay to fail. As we talked about in a previous podcast, failure is good. It means we can grow as a team and as an individual. One of the ways to help you understand and appreciate failure is to start thinking about the worst case scenario. What's the worst case scenario if this project isn't perfect? Really explore it. Many times when I sit down with my clients and we go through the worst case scenario, it's not that bad. Nobody died. Nobody had the potential to die. It's fine. Nobody's going to lose their jobs. Nobody's having a pay cut. Sure, it might be uncomfortable, but nothing bad happened. And that's what you need to do when it comes to any project and you feel that perfectionist really coming out of you is, hey, what is the worst case scenario? What could actually go wrong, and is it that bad? Because in my experience, never is. And then lastly, stop comparing yourself and your team to others. Comparison is the thief of happiness. When we look at many individuals that are neck deep in the perfectionist viewpoint, they are comparing themselves to other perfectionists who are living very unhealthy lifestyles. It's like workaholics. Workaholics are comparing their lifestyles to other workaholics and then trying to motivate each other to become better workaholics. That's a terrible thing to do. Stop comparing yourself to the other people around you. They are not you. They are not on the same journey, and odds are they are only showing you a small slice of their life. It's like social media. Social media doesn't tell you the ups and downs of a person's life, only the best of the best things that are happening to those individuals. If we compare ourselves to those that are just showing only the highlights, Of course we're going to be depressed. Of course we're going to be unhappy. As leaders, we need to accept we are on our own journey and our team is on their own unique journey. And as such, we cannot compare it to any other team or leader out there. This is a uniquely personal journey for us. To wrap up a lot of what we talked about, perfection doesn't exist. It's within the eye of the beholder. Perfection is a tool to help you procrastinate. It feeds into toxic leadership styles, such as the hyperachiever, the micromanager, and the controller. It will create a toxic workplace with your team because your peeps aren't allowed to make mistakes. They don't take responsibility for their work. It crushes their creativity, and it decreases their productivity. But on top of that, it destroys your mental health and your team's mental health. You'll start to see anxiety, depression, stress, and ultimately burnout. And if left unchecked, a high staff turnover. How we change this is we need to become comfortable with a minimal viable product, understanding that we can get things to market that are really good, but they're not perfect, and to accept that. We need to learn to trust our team. We hired these people. Trust them. I know it's going to be uncomfortable, but trust them. We think of the worst case scenario. We stop comparing ourselves to others, and we dictate tasks to our team so it reduces the work that we have on our plate. Stay away from perfection. And with that, we're going to close out our podcast. I hope you learned something. If you have a topic or a question, feel free to reach out to me at amelnyk, MELNYK, @seatingthelead.com, and I would be happy to answer it. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, give it a like, and share it with a friend. And if you're ready to take the next leap and improve your leadership skills, head over to www.seatingthelead.com and book your free coaching session today.